welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're doing something a bit different, maybe even unprecedented for us. We're going deep.
Really deep. We're talking about the black world, the highest levels of classified science in the U.S., stuff that's meant to operate completely beyond any kind of normal oversight.
Exactly. We're looking at where, advanced biology meets things like time paradoxes, potentially non-human intelligence, all managed by organizations that, well, officially, they just don't exist.
And we've got two narratives that sort of weave together here, both coming from inside that secret world. First, there's the story of this scientist, Dan Burrish, a really extraordinary case.
Right. Recruited, apparently, to directly interface with some kind of captured being at S4 near Area 51.
And then almost the opposite experience, we have the story of, a regular technician, low-level comparatively.
Whose job involved guarding an object, something that seems to ignore the laws of physics as we know them, a completely different kind of pressure cooker.
Yeah. One is high-stakes interaction. The other is this kind of grinding psychological routine, both happening within this hidden ecosystem.
Our sources here are, well, they're intense. Whistleblower testimony, claimed internal accounts. You talk about Majestic 12, what it's really like inside Area 51, the deep stuff.
And our mission today really is to try and map out the psychological side of this. What happens to a person when they're tasked with guarding truths about non-human entities, about time itself being flexible, about humanity's origins maybe not being what we think?
What happens when reality itself is suddenly, up for grabs?
And for you listening, this isn't just about the sensational stuff, the sort of sci-fi elements, though they're definitely there. We want to give you the tools to understand the concepts they use inside these programs.
Things like compartmentalization, right? And sheep dipping.
Exactly. And even stranger ideas like quantum non-locality. We'll use analogies, try to make these dense ideas, stick. So get ready. It's going to challenge some assumptions about what governments might be hiding.
Okay, so let's start with the first narrative, the scientist. Dan Burrish. Born Daniel Burrish, Linwood, California, 1964. The sources paint him as, exceptional right from the start.
Oh yeah, a classic prodigy profile. It seems he had this almost unnatural talent for science, particularly the really small stuff, microscopy, cellular biology. His parents, John and Dodie Crane, they apparently encouraged it.
But his skills quickly outpaced, what you'd expect for his age.
Absolutely. And then something really pivotal happens when he's only 8 years old. A formative incident, they call it.
He's playing catch with his grandfather, May Boyer Park in Lakewood. And he sees something, a craft.
Yes, a silent chevron-shaped craft. But it wasn't just a sighting. It triggered what sounds like a classic missing time event. A localized one, but still.
Missing time. So, an abduction.
That's how it was interpreted later, within the classified programs he eventually joined. A non-consensual contact. And Dan himself apparently came to believe it left him enhanced for future purpose?
Enhanced. So this wasn't just trauma, it was seen as altering him.
Strategically altering him. That's the implication. That single event, in their view, potentially turned his raw talent into something useful, something they could maybe leverage later.
And you see the effects pretty quickly in his academic path, right?
Definitely. By 15, he's the youngest person ever admitted to the Los Angeles Microscopical Society. That's highly unusual.
And he finds a mentor.
Dr. Jim Reynolds, director of pathology at Long Beach Memorial Hospital. He gets hands-on training in medical microbiology, histology, stuff way beyond his peers.
Okay, so this is where the quiet observation starts. Government interests.
Seems so. The U.S. Navy, other connected groups, they start monitoring him apparently as early as high school. They liked his intellect, sure, but the sources suggest they were really interested in any residual effects from that childhood incident.
What he might carry with him. As you said, it wasn't just about smarts.
No, it was about potential. Maybe some kind of innate understanding or even a connection resulting from that encounter. They look for patterns, anomalies.
It sounds like a very specific kind of talent scouting, not just for IQ, but for something else. Almost like those Cold War programs looking for psychic abilities, but focused on this non-human angle.
That's a good analogy. Identifying individuals who might already have some kind of predisposition or connection. And the moment of formal recruitment comes later, during his final semester at UNLV, he's studying biology and psychology.
He's approached
by 3 men. Not a job offer in the normal sense, it was an offer of access. Access to knowledge, to resources, to programs operating in total secrecy. That's his entry point into the world of special access programs, or SAPs.
And from that moment, his life splits in two. the public persona and the hidden work.
which requires serious cover. And this brings us to sheep dipping. Let's unpack that because it's key to how these operations maintain secrecy.
Okay, so publicly, he's got these seemingly normal, if slightly irregular jobs. Parole officer for Nevada, security guard at Vegas casinos, Sahara, Fiesta, Aladdin.
Right. And sheep dipping isn't just about having a cover job. It's about actively creating a misleading, even mundane public record. You're essentially poisoning the well for anyone looking into you.
So someone, say a journalist or foreign intelligence, starts digging into Daniel Burrish.
They find records of him working odd hours as a probation officer, clocking in shifts at casinos. It looks perfectly plausible, maybe a bit dull. It explains away absences, irregular schedules. It provides maximum deniability.
It severs any obvious link between him and, ultra-secret scientific work, creates a buffer.
Exactly, a firewall of banality. But while he's doing that, his real assignments are already ramping up in secrecy.
EHU samples start arriving. Unknown origin.
Delivered right to his office, along with portable, high-powered microscopes. Even before any formal briefing, the implication is unavoidable. This stuff is not terrestrial, it's not from here.
And then his career gets a massive boost from someone very, very high up.
Dr. Edward Teller, father of the H-bomb. Teller apparently took a personal interest in Burrish's analytical skills. This kind of patronage is, well, it's powerful.
And Teller facilitates a specialized doctoral program.
Through SUNY Stony Brook, focused on cellular biology and molecular genetics, tailored to the needs of the program he was entering. It wasn't a standard PhD track.
All happening under the umbrella of this shadowy group, Majestic 12 or MJ12.
The organization that supposedly doesn't exist, right? Yeah. Set up back in the 40s, allegedly, to handle all things extraterrestrial crash retrievals, contact, treaties, operating totally outside normal government channels. They were grooming Burrish.
And his education itself was compartmentalized.
Highly. Classified learning modules slipped into his official coursework. The Navy funded parts of the doctorate directly. Handlers were constantly evaluating him, not just academically, but psychologically.
Even his dissertation defense wasn't normal.
No, it was done privately, in Nevada. SUNY professors flew out. It wasn't about public academic contribution. It was about finalizing his integration into the deepest level of the black world. He finished that in 1989.
So, doctorate complete, deeply embedded. His first real taste of operational work is interesting. The Gulf War.
Yeah, 1991. A black ops deployment to Iraq. The mission was apparently focused on identifying and neutralizing some kind of rogue biological warfare agents, high-stakes stuff.
But right after that, he gets the call. The big one.
Back to Nevada. But not just Area 51, not Groom Lake as most people think of it. His destination was S4.
S4. 12 miles southwest of Papoose Lake. Even more secret, deeper underground.
That's the lore. Extreme compartmentalization, supposedly close to where recovered technology was studied.
And the journey there sounds deliberately weird. The Janet Terminal at McCarran Airport, playing Neil Diamond's Coming to America on repeat.
It's those little details, right?
Yeah.
So jarringly mundane against the backdrop of extreme secrecy. It highlights the psychological disconnect, the absurdity of the environment they maintain.
Like a deliberate disorientation tactic.
Could be. And the security at S4 itself was reportedly brutal, transported in an unmarked van, the Cannonball Express.
Stripped, weighed, scanned, wedding ring locked away, total control.
And inside, those visual cues, blue lines on the floor, safe to walk, red lines, cross them and you would die. That's the quote.
And the guards. Black seals, no insignia, just weapons and silence.
Total anonymity, total authority. Once he's through all that, he gets the briefing. Project Aquarius.
Small room, metal table, those binders, the king tuts.
Yeah, repurposed military briefing books. And this is where they finally connect the dots for him. Those tissue samples he'd been analyzing back in Vegas.
EBEs, extraterrestrial biological entities.
Yeah.
Linked to these Aquarius protocols.
Right. And interestingly, just like you hear in other accounts, like Bob Lazar's testimony,
they told him they were from Zeta Reticuli.
That's what the sources claim he was told initially. Whether that was the actual truth or just part of the internal narrative Majestic maintained, that's another question.
But his new job wasn't just analysis anymore. It was direct interface.
Yes. Physical proximity. In the ambassador suite, using a specialized containment unit called the Clean Sphere, Level 4 biohazard containment.
And the suiting up process sounds intense, like an astronaut spacewalk.
Full positive pressure suit, tech gear, conductive biosensors monitoring him, triple scrubbed air. The suit itself apparently resisted movement, like working against hydraulics, extreme precautions.
All this to interact with.
Yeah.
The J-Rod. Let's talk about the description of this entity. It's central to the story.
It really is. Physically, about 3.5 feet tall, described as frail, almost skeletal. The body seemed barely strong enough to support this disproportionately large, bulbous head.
And the skin. There's a detail about the skin being like weathered leather.
Brownish, worn-looking, yes, and constantly coated in this glistening film, a glycoprotein layer, which wasn't just incidental, it was apparently a biological sign of its deteriorating health. A mucosal excretion linked to its condition.
So clearly unwell. And the eyes.
Huge, almond-shaped, completely black, reflecting very little light, 4 long fingers on each hand, and a noticeable tremor suggesting some kind of neuropathy, nerve damage.
Just being sounds like it's in serious decline. Suffering, even.
That's the strong impression given. And this is where the whole extraterrestrial biological entity label starts to break down, according to Bursch's account. It was a deliberate misdirection by Majestic.
So, not an alien from Zeta Reticuli.
No. The claim is the J-Rod was actually a divergent branch of humanity from our future, roughly 52,000 years forward.
Future humans.
Yeah.
How did they end up looking like that?
Genetic degradation. According to the story, their condition was the result of catastrophic events in their timeline, nuclear wars, environmental collapse, timeline disruptions from their own technology, and critically, a long, damaging reliance on cloning for reproduction.
Cloning led to breakdown.
Loss of genetic diversity, accumulation of errors. Essentially, they'd cloned themselves into a biological dead end. They were, in a sense, looking at a possible, terrifying future for us.
Wow. Okay. And the name J-Rod. Just a code.
Exactly. Assigned by Majestic's Sigma linguistics team, J equals 10, Rod equals 5, total 15. It was just a classification number within their treaty system, not an identity. Dehumanizing, really.
So Birish's job was medical, trying to help with the neuropathy.
Yes, performing cytoplasmic extractions, taking cellular material to try and create treatment grafts. But the strict protocols, the sterile distance, it all fell apart pretty quickly.
How so?
Because the J-Rod initiated contact, unauthorized communication. It breached the control structure Majestic had built.
Wait, how? Telepathy? Some kind of tech?
Described as neural entrainment, a direct mind-to-mind link. Burish felt it as a gentle pull on his consciousness. His anxiety just dissolved, and then the thought arrived.
I won't hurt you.
Directly into his mind, bypassing all the security, the suit, everything. Completely bypassing it. A direct neural interface, unsanctioned, unexpected.
And it got even more intense than just thoughts, didn't it? The pain aspect.
Yeah, this is maybe the most profound part. During the extraction procedures, which were presumably painful for the J-Rod, Burish started feeling the J-Rod's sharp internal pain spikes in real time, synchronously.
Not just empathy, but actually experiencing the physical pain.
That's the claim. Like shared agony across that neural link. Think about phantom limb syndrome, where you feel a limb that isn't there. But this was feeling someone else's internal pain. Someone frail and suffering, separated by a containment field, and, well, 52,000 years.
That must have been incredibly disorienting. Shattering, even.
It seems it was, and the moment that truly broke through all the conditioning, all the compartmentalization, was when the J-Rod communicated a specific name.
A name?
It's Synthethought. It's all right, Benet. You are helping.
Bede.
Burish's childhood nickname. Known only to his immediate family, definitely not in any official Majestic file.
Oh, wow. So the J-Rod knew his personal history.
Instantly, Dan realized the connection. This J-Rod, this being from the future he was trying to help, was the same entity involved in his childhood abduction. The circle closed. Captor, patient, linked across time.
That's a paradigm shift right there.
Absolutely. And the shock, the realization, was apparently overwhelming. Burish physically collapsed. And as he's staggering, the J-Rod does something completely unexpected.
What?
It climbs onto his chest, remember? Burish is in the big suit and places its small, four-fingered hands directly onto his helmet's faceplate.
A physical touch.
And through that contact point, the neural channel didn't just open, it flooded. Burish described an overwhelming, unstructured data-dump.
A download.
Of what?
Everything. The true history of the timelines, the future wars, the details of the Looking Glass technology, the Kingman crash back in '53, Stargates, and this fundamental, terrifying realization that he and the J-Rod were, in some sense, one consciousness split by time.
Permanently embedding all that classified history directly into his mind. Unauthorized.
No.
Unfilterable. Exactly. A complete breach of protocol initiated by the entity itself. The system lost control.
So moving beyond that immediate intense interaction, The knowledge Dan now carried tied into a much bigger framework, these Tau treaty systems.
Right. This was the diplomatic or maybe quasi-diplomatic structure Majestic 12 had set up. Highly classified agreements negotiated over time with several different future human groups.
Not just the J-Rods.
No, the sources mention the P-52 Orions, who were apparently different, maybe more robust or aggressive, the P-45 J-Rods, perhaps an earlier group, and Kella, the specific P-52K J-Rod that Dan was interfacing with.
And these treaties covered what exactly? It sounds incredibly complex.
Mind-boggling scope, really. Biological sampling protocols, how they could collect genetic material, limited tech exchange, what future tech they might share, or maybe what we shared, rules around abductions, both sanctioned and presumably unsanctioned ones, and crucially, trying to manage the timeline paradoxes their interactions were creating.
Which leads us directly to the looking glass technology, the time viewer.
The most dangerous tool they had, arguably. Not a crystal ball showing the future, but a device that could peer into a range of probable futures, branching possibilities based on current actions.
How did it supposedly work? The science behind it.
Described as engineered Einstein-Rosen bridges, basically small, controllable wormholes stabilized within powerful containment fields, allowed them to map out potential consequences. A huge strategic advantage, or so they thought.
But it needed something specific to function, something rare.
Element 115. This exotic heavy element supposedly recovered from the Kingman, Arizona UFO crash in 1953. The sources insist that all attempts to synthesize element 115 failed.
Why was it so important?
It apparently had unique gravitational and energetic properties, essential for stabilizing the distortions in space-time needed to create those controlled wormholes. Without the original element 115, the looking glass was just inert hardware.
So getting this tech online, using material from a crashed, well, future human craft, presumably, that's when the problems really started escalating.
Exponentially. They moved from theory to practice, and the results were not good. Sending inanimate objects through apparently worked.
But living things.
Catastrophic failure. Burish himself mentioned hearing the screams of animals used in early tests, and then the confirmation of a human volunteer trial. It was described simply as not survivable.
Not survivable. That's chillingly understated.
It implies a truly horrific outcome. That line of research, physical time travel or teleportation via this method, was shut down hard. The ambition to control time ran straight into an unimaginable barrier, a lethal one.
And this experience, this failure, fed into the core problem Majestic faced. The doctrine of the convergent timeline paradox.
This is the absolute heart of the matter, the existential crisis for Majestic. They realized through the looking glass and their interactions that the more they tried to fix the future,
the more they guaranteed it.
Exactly. The more they interfered trying to avert a future war they saw, making treaties to alter current events, even the genetic programs trying to repair the J-Rods, the more they locked in the very catastrophic future that created the J-Rods in the first place.
It's a feedback loop from hell. A recursive nightmare.
Every solution became part of the problem. See a future catastrophe, try to prevent it, and your actions become the necessary precondition for that catastrophe to happen 52,000 years later. There was no way out using the tools they had.
What did that do to Majestic internally?
Crippling effect. Widened the existing fractures within the organization. Led to unstable data projections from the looking glass because the future kept shifting based on their attempts to observe or change it. Intense infighting, political maneuvering. The system was collapsing under its own weight. The paradox proved that controlling time was not just impossible, but self-destructive.
And the future humans, the J-Rods and Orions, they were putting pressure on Majestic too.
Immense pressure. They likely saw the paradox unfolding as well. The looking glass technology was identified as a key failure point, a source of instability.
So what happened to it?
Fully decommissioned. Dismantled by the early 2000s. A decisive end to Majestic's primary tool for trying to predict or manipulate future events. They essentially blinded themselves, partly out of necessity. But even as Majestic was fragmenting, the diplomatic channels remained, sort of, the final negotiations under this Town 9 structure, and Dan Burish was central to this.
Acting as a bridge between human leadership, who must have been terrified, and these future human groups.
That seems to be the role he played. And during these incredibly sensitive final talks, he was given access to another piece of exotic technology, the Yellow Book, or sometimes called the Cube.
The Yellow Book? What was that? Different from the looking glass?
Very different. Smaller, portable, supposedly an ancient artifact itself, maybe gifted way back during the Eisenhower administration. Majestic held onto it. It also showed branching timelines, potential futures, catastrophes.
But it didn't need element 115.
Correct. Its operational principle was different. And this is the really strange part. It was said to be psychically reactive.
Psychically reactive. Meaning what?
Meaning the images, the timelines it displayed were influenced by the emotional state, the fears, the subconscious biases of the person looking into it. It wasn't an objective screen, it was partly a mirror.
So if you were afraid of nuclear war, it would show you more potential nuclear wars, amplifying your own fears.
That's the idea. A projection tool that reflects the observer's soul in a way. Terrifying, but potentially useful in negotiation.
How did Burrish use it?
As leverage. During those final tense Town 9 sessions, he apparently used the cube to show the participants, both human and future human, some truly grim potential futures. Futures likely amplified by their own anxieties to push them towards compromise, towards ending the most dangerous programs.
And did it work? Did they reach a final agreement?
Yes. The final treaty, key outcomes. The genetic hybridization programs were stopped. And, critically, the abduction phenomenon was formally declared closed. No more sanction taking of humans.
But there was one last piece of business. A final communication.
A sort of diplomatic farewell event scheduled with the J-Rod Kellis faction. But it couldn't use the looking glass tech, obviously.
So they needed a natural gateway.
An existing, stable Einstein-Rosen bridge. A natural fold in space-time somewhere on Earth.
And the location. Not Giza.
No, the Temple of Abydos in Egypt. One of the oldest sacred sites, deeply tied to myths of death, resurrection, passage between worlds. Apparently, it houses one of Earth's most stable natural space-time nodes. Discrete, powerful, symbolic.
And Burrish had to be there.
He was requested. Officially for medical continuity, given his relationship with Kella, but really it was about trust. Kella trusted him.
So the scene. Abydos. The portal is active, humming. Kella is there in his portable glass containment chamber.
And there's this final exchange. Kella reaches out, neurally or perhaps just through presence, and shares his actual name. Not J-Rod, Kella.
A moment of individual recognition.
And in that moment, Burrish sees him not as an asset, not an alien, not a specimen, but as a prisoner. A profoundly unwell being who deserved freedom.
And he makes a decision.
A monumental one. Violating every order, every protocol he's ever known, he puts his hand on Kella's containment unit and pushes it through the activated portal. Sends him home, or wherever the portal led, an act of liberation.
Wow, just lets him go, defying the entire majestic structure.
An incredible act of personal conscience. And with that, the biological treaty effectively ended not through negotiation, but through defiance.
What happened to Burrish? Surely they wouldn't just let that slide.
Incredibly, he wasn't killed or disappeared. The speculation is that because of the data download from Kella, he held too much unstructured knowledge in his head, information they couldn't fully extract or control. He became a kind of living archive, too valuable or perhaps too dangerous to simply eliminate.
And Majestic 12 itself.
Officially dissolved by 2005, according to these accounts. Lost its tech, fragmented internally. Its remnants became more like a ritualistic tradition than an active operational body. Burrish himself went on to work on something called Project Lotus, looking into universal regenerative forces, forever marked by what he'd seen and done.
It's striking. This massive apparatus of secrecy and control, ultimately undone by a personal neural connection and an act of compassion.
The human element overriding the system. It's a powerful theme.
Okay, now let's pivot completely. From that high-level drama, the future humans, the treaties, to the other side of the coin. The sheer grinding routine of a technician deep inside the same system. 1996.
Yes, the contrast is deliberate and important. While Burrish is dealing with existential stakes, this technician's life is defined by monotony and sensory deprivation.
Starts with a 2.45 a.m. beeper, the drive to McCarran, the Janet flight again.
And the music on the plane this time. James Brown's Living in America. Another piece of bizarre, almost cruel irony given where they're going.
A life completely cut off from normal America. And the base itself sounds like a maze.
Constantly changing. New corridors appearing where walls used to be. Unlabeled. It sounds like deliberate architectural disorientation, designed to enforce compartmentalization. You only know your path.
And his path was the yellow line, assigned to still sight observation.
Follow the yellow line. Don't deviate. Don't look anywhere else. Pure psychological control through environment.
And his job. Watching Subject 88A? What was Subject 88A?
Okay, get this. A small stone, rough, dark gray, but shaped like a perfect, unnaturally precise pyramid.
Origin.
Recovered in 1943. A classified mission underneath the Great Pyramid in Egypt. an unlisted chamber. And the chamber itself was weird, non-Euclidean.
That's the description. Geometry that doesn't follow normal rules. Space itself warped or unstable, suggesting the object came from or existed within that kind of distorted reality. Okay, weird origin. But the really strange part is its behavior, right? The reason for the observation post.
This is the core of it. The object does nothing, absolutely nothing, when it's being directly observed.
But when it's not observed, by any means, eyes, cameras, motion sensors.
It moves, changes position, changes orientation. It only exhibits activity when unobserved.
That sounds like quantum weirdness on a macro scale, the observer effect.
Exactly. It's like Schrodinger's cat, but instead of being alive dead, the stone is moving, not moving, or maybe existing in multiple states until conscious observation collapses the wave function and forces it into a single, fixed, stationary state.
So the act of looking literally freezes it in place.
That's the principle. And because of this, it's supposedly impervious to manipulation. They've tried, according to the account. Cut it in half, melted it down, even powdered it. The moment observation lapsed, even for an instant, it reconstituted itself, perfectly reformed. It requires continuous conscious engagement to remain stable in our observable reality.
Which explains the job.
Yeah.
6-hour shifts, just sitting and looking.
Torture, basically. Maintaining continuous direct observation. They even had protocols for coordinating blinking, or keeping a hand physically touching the containment unit to ensure conscious continuity.
The psychological strain must have been immense.
Unimaginable. 6 hours of forced, hypervigilant stillness. The technician mentions the chair itself felt wrong, like sitting in someone else's posture. The low hum of the room, the silence amplifying his own breathing, his own blinking.
Sensory deprivation mixed with extreme focus. What does that do to the mind?
Creates distortion. He describes his mind looping, focusing intensely on the act of watching itself, which leads him to this unsettling thought. Maybe the object isn't just an object. Maybe it's a mirror, not of your eyes, but the act of watching itself.
A mirror of observation.
Wow. And then, inevitably, the mind slips. Exhaustion sets in. That brief moment of mental surrender, a lapse in focus.
And the body jolts awake.
And in that split second, he suspects, did it move? Just an inch closer to the glass. He can't be sure. He can't break protocol and report a suspicion. But the doubt is planted.
As the end of the shift nears, things get weirder. The hum changes.
The technician perceives it changing. The high-pitched environmental hum seems to build with intention. He starts staring differently, searching, trying to force the object to reveal something, trying to understand.
But understanding doesn't come from forcing it.
No. It comes in the moment of complete surrender. He finally gives up the struggle, just lets his mind go blank. He blanks. The room is the same, the stone is still, but the reflection on the containment glass, it changes. The figure staring back is him. Same posture, same uniform, same breath, but it's separate and it's not blinking.
A duplicate. A reflection come to life.
That's the experience. This duplicate figure then rises, walks to the glass dividing them. It raises his hand, and rests on the pane. A silent invitation.
An invitation to acknowledge.
To recognize. The technician, compelled, raises his own hand to meet the reflection's hand on the glass.
What happens?
An electric sensation, but no sound. Just direct, full eye contact between the technician and his double. And in that moment, the understanding hits him. The core truth of the assignment. This was never about observation. It was about recognition. Recognizing the self in the observed, perhaps. Or recognizing the observer as the phenomenon.
A profound, silent communion. Beyond science, beyond protocols.
Exactly. Then the figure steps back, dissolves. The object is just a stone again. His replacement arrives. The shift ends. The ritual is complete.
But he can't just walk away unchanged.
No. The experience is too heavy, too real for the official logs. Outside, he takes out a private notepad, writes down the simple truth he now knows. I saw it move.
But he doesn't keep the note.
No. He finds a still smoldering cigarette butt someone dropped, kneels down, and sets the note on fire, burns the evidence.
Why?
The knowledge is internalized now. Too personal, too dangerous, maybe too sacred for a written record. The job title, the security clearance, the yellow line.
Yeah.
None of it matters anymore. He found understanding not by controlling the object, but by surrendering control, by recognizing something fundamental. So bringing these two narratives together, it's quite a synthesis. We've gone from S4 and the J-rods to the still site and this unobservable stone.
And in both cases, the deepest secrets weren't really about flying saucers or alien tech in the simple sense. They were about humanity's nature, our potential future, our origins, and about the nature of reality itself.
And notice the parallel. Both Burrish and the technician found their most profound truths through unexpected, unauthorized contact. Burrish through the neural link and shared pain, the technician through psychological surrender and recognition.
In both stories, the system failed. The protocols, the security, the compartmentalization, it all broke down when faced with genuine connection, or maybe just raw human consciousness interacting with the unknown.
Majestic's whole effort to control time, as seen through the J-Rod story, backfired spectacularly, creating the very future they feared. The convergent timeline paradox. Ultimate failure of control.
And the technician learned the object only yielded its secret, that moment of recognition, when he stopped trying to observe and control it, when he surrendered.
So the final thought we want to leave you with, the learner. If these accounts suggest that the highest levels of secrecy were built on and perpetuated fundamentally false narratives that the J-Rods were aliens, that the cube gave objective truth, that the stone could be scientifically managed through observation.
How does that make you think about other tightly controlled narratives you encounter, official stories, classified information? If the core reality within these programs was so profoundly different from the internal dogma.
Where does that leave our ability to trust what we're told, especially when control and secrecy are paramount? Is the deepest truth in science and life maybe only accessible when we finally surrender the need to dominate and control it? When we allow for recognition instead of just observation, something to think about. Welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today we've got, well, it's a massive undertaking. We've tackled what might be the most complex set of sources we've ever looked at.
It really is. We're talking about a huge collection focused on UFO encounter reports, specifically looking for patterns in the narratives.
Yeah, it's not just one incident. We started with Roswell in 1947, 10 really dense chapters covering everything. The crash, the materials, the military side of things.
Meticulously detailed stuff, documents, testimonies, the whole 9 yards for Roswell.
And then right after that, we dove into 22 other reports. Global encounters, less famous maybe, but incredibly detailed and atmospheric. These stories span, what, decades? Continents?
Oh yeah, all over the map, from remote deserts to quiet lakesides. And the sources are interesting because they mix things up. You get the factual, almost dry military reports alongside these really personal, visceral accounts from people who saw something.
So our mission today, this deep dive, it's not really about if something crashed at Roswell. We're past that basic question, aren't we?
I think so, for this discussion at least. The goal here is synthesis. We need to look at all this data, Roswell, global reports, and find the connections. What links these incredibly different experiences?
Right, we're looking for the patterns, the secrecy that always seems to follow, the weird sensory stuff witnesses report.
Exactly, the strange sounds or the lack of sound, the visual anomalies, and the psychological impact, which is often profound and long-lasting.
So we're blending the physical, the actual reported debris from Roswell with the non-physical. Yeah. The missing time, the silence, the fear.
Precisely. To try and get a sense of the whole picture. What is the full scope of these phenomena when you put all these varied accounts together?
Okay, let's do it. Let's start at the beginning, the cornerstone really, Roswell. 1947. All right, so the sources paint a picture right away. Foster Ranch, summer 47, middle of nowhere, New Mexico. Hot, dusty.
And quiet. The sources really emphasize the quiet. Silence, solitude, and time slowed. That's the description. A place where nothing much usually happens.
Until that night, July 2nd, wasn't it?
That's the date. MacBrazel, the ranch foreman, gets woken up past midnight. Not by thunder, not by animals, by a sound.
And the description of the sound is key here. It wasn't just loud, it was wrong.
Exactly. Strange and sharp with a metallic quality, like something huge just ripped through the sky overhead. Very specific, very unsettling description.
And then silence again.
Total silence. As if the desert itself was just stunned, holding its breath, waiting for daylight to show what happened.
And daylight revealed quite a mess. A debris field nearly a quarter-mile wide. This is where it shifts from just loud noise to something tangible, something bizarre.
In the materials MacBrazel described finding. This is the heart of the Roswell mystery, isn't it? This is the stuff that defies explanation.
Let's talk about that foil. It's probably the most famous piece. He crumpled it up.
Right, he picks up this light, foil-like material, crushes it in his hand, and when he opens his hand, it just springs back. Unfolded itself again, smooth and unmarked.
Think about that. You crumple aluminum foil, it stays crumpled forever. This stuff had memory, perfect memory.
It suggests a material science way beyond anything we had in 47. Or even now, arguably. And there was other stuff too, right?
Oh, yeah. Fragments described as stiff and lightweight. Incredibly strong for how little they weighed. And cold.
Cold to the touch, unnaturally so.
Yeah.
Even sitting out in the New Mexico summer sun, that suggests something about its thermal properties, maybe insulation or something else entirely.
And it wouldn't break. He tried, others tried. It flexed but would not tear. No grain, no weak points.
And crucially, how it was put together. Or rather, how it wasn't. No screws, no rivets, no signs of human construction. It seemed seamless, like it was formed, not assembled.
Almost like it was grown.
That's the implication in some accounts. And then the symbol.
The symbols, little markings on some of the pieces, described as like hieroglyphs, but alien. Precise shapes.
And not painted or stamped on. They were part of the material, etched, or built into the metal itself, the sources say. Integral, like lettering through a stick of rock.
So you've got this rancher, IamAbhi.Musale, standing there with pieces of, well, impossible technology. What does he do?
He eventually contacts the authorities, which brings Major Jesse Marcel into the picture, intelligence officer from the Roswell Army Airfield.
And Marcel wasn't just anyone. He was trained to identify aircraft, foreign tech.
Exactly. He was the right guy to look at this stuff. And he was, by all accounts, meticulous. He handled the debris, saw how it sprang back into shape, saw the strange symbols.
And his initial reaction, before the official story kicked in.
Honest confusion. Utter bafflement. His quote is pretty famous. "I don't know, but it's not from anything I've seen in my time." That's a powerful statement from an intelligence officer.
And the detail about him showing it to his son, that always strikes me.
It does, doesn't it? It suggests he knew right then that this was huge, something world-changing. He wanted his kid to see a piece of history before it disappeared.
Which it did remarkably quickly. The public announcement, that was incredibly short-lived.
Astonishingly brief. Chapter 6 details this. The base's intelligence office puts out this press release. Super dramatic. They was fortunate enough to gain possession of a disc.
And the newspaper headline. Couldn't be clearer.
AF captures flying saucer. 5 bold words. For a moment, the truth, or what they believed was the truth, was out there.
And then, slam, the door shuts.
Immediately, orders come down from higher command. Washington gets involved. The story changes completely.
It wasn't a disc anymore.
Nope. Suddenly, it's merely a weather balloon, just a standard weather device. And poor Major Marcel. He was just an overzealous officer who got it wrong.
The speed of that retraction is almost as suspicious as the debris itself, isn't it?
It really is. It suggests an immediate, high-level decision to shut this down. Hard.
And they didn't just retract the story, they staged evidence. The photo op.
Ah, the infamous photo. Major Marcel looking, as the sources say, dutiful and tired, posed next to, actual weather balloon debris. Foil, rubber, sticks.
Stuff that looked nothing like what he'd actually found.
Absolutely nothing like it. According to his later accounts and his son's, it was pure stage management. A visual lie to sell the new narrative and discredit the original find.
So the story is contained. But what about the actual debris Marcel collected? The real stuff.
It vanished. Chapters 8 and 9 go into the systematic cover-up. This wasn't just about changing the story, it was about erasing the evidence.
Files went missing.
Files disappeared from supposedly secure locations. Personnel who handled the debris, like mechanics who helped unload it, quietly reassigned. Sent hundreds of miles away, often overnight.
Plausible deniability built right in.
Exactly. And any photos. Negatives, prints documenting the real wreckage, reportedly shredded, boxes of the actual fragments, the stuff Marcel brought back, they disappeared from locked storage. Poof.
So a thorough cleansing. Why? What was the rationale discussed in those secret meetings mentioned in Chapter 9?
It seems multifaceted. Preventing public panic was definitely a factor. You can imagine the chaos if it was confirmed we weren't alone and something had crashed.
Sure, that makes sense.
Then there were strategic concerns. If the U.S. had recovered alien tech, they wouldn't want potential adversaries like the Soviets back then knowing about it. Fear of starting an arms race based on reverse engineering this stuff.
To keep it quiet to maintain geopolitical stability.
That seems to be the main thrust. Stability over disclosure. The perceived need to control the situation outweighed any obligation to tell the public the truth.
And what about IamAbhi.Musale in all this? The guy who started it all.
His story is quite sad, really. Chapter 7 details his shift. He goes from finding something incredible, this initial wonder, to fear.
He retracted his story too, didn't he?
Publicly, yes. He ended up saying, "I made a mistake, found a bit of weather balloon." But the sources suggest he was heavily pressured, possibly intimidated.
Intimidated how?
There are these unsettling details. Finding unexplained tracks on my land after the military had been there. Seeing a shadow near his well. Subtle things, maybe, but enough to make a man living in isolation think twice.
So he lived with it, knowing what he saw but forced to deny it.
Yeah. The sources say he carried his memories with a mixture of wonder and regret, a heavy burden. And his experience, that pattern of witness intimidation or silencing, it sets a precedent we see echoed in other reports later on.
Okay, so Roswell establishes the baseline. Impossible materials, swift military control, a cover story, and a silenced witness. How does this connect to the other 22 global reports?
Well, this is where it gets really compelling. We move from that very specific 1947 incident to decades of sightings across the globe. And what's striking is how certain characteristics keep popping up, echoing aspects of Roswell.
Characteristics of the objects themselves.
Primarily, yes.
Yeah.
The way they move, their appearance, the materials employed. Even descriptions from, say, the 1980s in Europe seem to share DNA with what Musale handled in 47. It suggests we're not looking at dozens of different phenomena, but maybe variations of the same core technology or presence.
Let's talk about movement first. Roswell debris implied advanced tech. What about the movement in these other reports?
The big paradox is silence versus power. These things are often reported as huge, moving incredibly fast, making impossible maneuvers. Yet, they're silent. Completely silent.
That's a recurring theme, isn't it? The silence.
It's huge. Think about anything large moving fast in our atmosphere. It makes noise. Jet engines roar, helicopters whoop, whoop, whoop. These things, often nothing.
Like at the report from Montana.
Story 4. Exactly. The 3 matte black triangles. Massive objects flying formation, described as completely silent. Or the huge oval over Lac St. John in Quebec, story 6. Quiet and steady as if it had always been.
It violates basic physics, or at least our understanding of propulsion. No sound means no friction, no air displacement.
Or maybe a propulsion system we just don't comprehend. The Roswell rumors mention movement too fast and too strange. In the Churchyard Lights report, story 3, the objects just shot straight up, disappeared straight upward, no sound, no trail.
So immense power, but controlled in a way that produces no discernible noise or conventional exhaust.
It implies mastery over physics that's frankly mind-boggling. Maybe manipulating gravity itself. If you're warping space-time around the craft, maybe you don't need to push against the air in the traditional sense.
Which would eliminate the noise and maybe connect back to those weird Roswell materials, lightweight, strong. Maybe they're part of that manipulation.
It's a fascinating line of thought the sources hint at. If the materials themselves have unique properties, maybe they facilitate this kind of interaction with space-time. The silence isn't just a byproduct. It's evidence of the type of physics at play.
Okay, so impossible, silent movement. What about the shapes? Roswell was initially a disk, but these other reports mention different forms, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's not all flying saucers. The shapes are varied, but consistently non-conventional, and often described as seamless, featureless.
Like what? Give us some examples from the sources.
There's the long, dark spindle slowly rotating seen over the Sinai Peninsula, story 8. Very non-aerodynamic. Then you have a perfect silver sphere reported in Uzbekistan, story 50, just hanging there.
Spheres, spindles. What about disks?
Still reported. Story 14, the transmission tower incident, describes a disc-shaped, featureless object. Dull metal, no lights initially, just hovering. The common factor is often the lack of discernible features. No windows, no seams, no rivets, echoing Musale's description of the Roswell debris.
Again, that idea of being formed rather than built. The geometry itself seems important.
It does. Smooth, perfect shapes. And if the craft themselves are strange and consistent, what about the occupants? Or the figures sometimes associated with them?
This is where it gets really strange for a lot of people. Beings reported.
Yes. And again, what's remarkable across different times and places is a certain uniformity in the descriptions. Not always, but often enough to be notable.
You'd expect descriptions to be all over the place, influenced by local folklore or individual psychology, right?
You would. If it was purely psychological, you'd get angels, demons, local monsters. But several reports describe figures with unnervingly similar characteristics. Tall, slender, often passive observers.
Like the red-eyed watcher from story 2.
Right, reported in Finland. 7 feet tall, pale skin, and these large, completely black eyes that glowed faintly red. The report emphasizes its stillness, just standing there, pointing. Silent communication, maybe.
Creepy. And the no-face watchers. Story 17.
From Tasmania. Even more abstract and unsettling. Tall, smooth bodies, but their heads were completely featureless. Like mannequins, but moving, sliding effortlessly down the ridge. The lack of a face is profoundly disturbing. No way to read intent or emotion.
Just pure blank observation.
Seems like it. And then there's the lake visitor in Quebec, story 6. Again, tall and slender. But the detail here is the figure was seen standing not in the water, but on it. Another casual defiance of physics.
So these watchers, the common thread is height, slenderness, and this passive, almost clinical observation.
That's often the sense you get from the reports, yes. They aren't necessarily interacting aggressively. They seem to be.
Okay.
Gathering data, observing. The nature of their presence is as alien as their appearance. They feel indifferent.
And that indifference, that lack of understandable motive, is perhaps more frightening than outright hostility.
It can be, absolutely. It implies a vast gulf in understanding, in purpose. We're not even necessarily relevant to them, except as subjects to be observed.
Okay, that sets a chilling stage. Let's move from the external observations, the craft, the figures, to the internal experience. What happens to the witness during these encounters?
This is where the phenomenon seems to cross a barrier. From something out there to something that directly affects the witness's perception and physiology. It starts often with sound, or the lack of it.
We talked about the silence of the craft, but you mean the ambient sound around the witness disappears too?
Exactly. It's a phenomenon reported again and again. This unnatural quiet descends before the main event. It's not just peaceful, it's described as heavy, oppressive.
Like in story 1, the nameless farm.
Perfect example. The witness notes specifically, no crickets, no wind, the quiet had weight to it. All the normal background noise of the environment just stops, cut off.
How could that happen? Is the phenomenon absorbing sound, creating a vacuum?
The sources don't explain the mechanism, obviously, but the effect is consistent. It suggests the phenomenon's influence extends beyond the visible object, creating a localized field effect that dampens or nullifies sound waves.
So first, this heavy, unnatural silence falls.
And then, often, that silence is broken. Not by normal sounds, but by specific, strange auditory events. These aren't just engine noises, they seem almost targeted.
Targeted how?
Well, back at the nameless farm, the silence gives way to a low, resonant hum. But the witness doesn't just hear it, they feel it. Vibrates in the chest. It's a physical sensation, internal.
So the sound interacts directly with the body.
It seems so. Other reports describe more precise sounds. Story 14, the transmission tower. A precise, steady frequency tone starts before a red beam appears, like an operational sound, maybe a warning.
Or the Sinai report, story 8, that sounded almost musical.
Right. Rhythmic, tonal, layered with an almost melodic hum. Again, very specific structured sound. Not random noise. It sounds engineered.
And you mentioned an internal sound, too, with the no-face watcher?
Yes. Story 17. The witness described a low hum vibrating internal as if a pressure was building just behind the eyes. That's deeply weird. It suggests something interacting directly with the witness's neurology, telepathy, some kind of frequency affecting the brain.
That is unsettling. A sound you feel inside your skull, linked to these featureless figures. Okay, if it's affecting the brain, that leads us straight into the really high strangeness stuff. Missing time.
Missing time. This is perhaps one of the most baffling and persistent elements across these global encounter reports. It's a signature of high strangeness.
It's not just witnesses feeling disoriented, right? There's objective evidence sometimes.
Often, yes. It's not just a subjective feeling of lost moments. Take story 4, the silent convoy. The trucker, Dave. He encounters the silent triangles. When it's over, he realizes he's driven 31 miles further down the road than he remembers, and an hour has passed on the clock.
And the physical proof.
His coffee. He was piping hot just before the encounter. Now it's cold. And his dash cam. An hour of static corresponds exactly to the missing time and distance. Something objectively happened that erased both his memory and the recording for that period.
The cold coffee is such a simple, powerful detail. It grounds the impossible and the mundane.
It really does. Then there's the case of Dr. Ari, story 12. This one's even more extreme.
What happened there?
He encounters something. Details are hazy in the report itself because of the outcome. But his mechanical watch stops. Not electronic, a wind-up watch. It freezes. And he loses 2 entire days.
2 days.
2 full days. He wakes up disoriented with no memory of that time. But he finds his journal filled with these complex, curved symbols. Symbols he doesn't recognize and has no memory of drawing.
So his conscious mind was offline, but something else was recording or interacting?
That's one interpretation the sources explore. Did his unconscious record something?
Yeah.
Was he somehow tasked with drawing these symbols during the missing time? We don't know. But the time is gone, and the symbols remain.
And the Hushed Farm, story 18. That one had a particularly dark outcome related to missing time.
Extremely dark. The clocks in the house stop. Not for long, just 3 minutes during the encounter. Everything just freezes for exactly 3 minutes.
Then afterward.
The father, who witnessed whatever happened in those 3 minutes, never speaks again. for the rest of his life. Whatever he experienced or learned in that short window of stopped time was enough to permanently silence him. The psychological impact was absolute.
That implies the knowledge gained or the experience itself during missing time can be unbearable.
Or perhaps deliberately removed, leaving only the trauma behind. If something can manipulate time, maybe it can also selectively edit memory.
Okay, so we have auditory disruption, neurological effects, missing time. What about interactions with technology? Human technology seems to fail consistently around these things.
Oh, consistently. It's another major pattern. If the phenomenon involves intense energy fields or gravity manipulation, it makes sense it would wreak havoc on our comparatively primitive tech.
Like cameras failing.
All the time. Cameras jamming right at the crucial moment. Compasses spinning wildly or even shattering, reported in Story 5, the glass forest, and Story 9, the fog station incident.
What about power sources?
Batteries draining in seconds, car engines dying, radios filling with static. It's as if the phenomenon creates an electromagnetic pulse or some kind of energy field that just shorts out or overwhelms human devices.
The field effect again, it's not just visual, it's actively interfering.
Actively and powerfully. And that energy doesn't just affect machines. It seems to affect biology too.
You mean physical effects on the witnesses? Or the environment?
Both. Environmentally, you get things like the missing cattle from the nameless farm just gone, or strange, scorched or depressed circles left on the ground where an object hovered, unexplained physical traces.
And on people, beyond the psychological impact.
Yes, acute physical symptoms are often reported right after an encounter. Unexplained nosebleeds, severe headaches, temporary blindness or disorientation mentioned in the Red-Eyed Watcher report, for instance.
Yeah, and long-term effects.
This is where it gets really concerning. Some sources, like the Glass Forest, Story 5, document follow-ups with witnesses who developed unusual medical conditions years later. Clusters of rare cancers, autoimmune disorders, things that could be coincidental, but the correlation is noted.
Suggesting exposure to unusual radiation or some kind of biological interaction we don't understand.
It certainly raises that possibility, that the energy field isn't just electromagnetism, but maybe something that interacts with biological systems on a cellular level. Again, the body itself becomes a sensor, recording an exposure that technology couldn't measure, with potentially devastating long-term consequences.
So the impact is total. Sensory, psychological, temporal, technological, and even biological. It's a comprehensive intrusion.
It really seems to be. These aren't just distant lights in the sky, according to these accounts. They're close encounters of a very profound and often deeply disturbing kind.
Okay, let's try to pull this all together. We have Roswell, the archetype. We have these 22 global stories showing repeating patterns. What's the big takeaway here? What's the legacy of all this?
I think the sources point towards a dual legacy. On one hand, you have the enduring mystery of the phenomenon itself. The objects, the potential occupants, the impossible physics, the sheer wonder and terror of the unknown.
On the other hand,
The human response, specifically the secrecy, the cover-ups, the silencing of witnesses, the official denials. The legacy isn't just what was seen, it's how humanity, or at least those in power, reacted to it.
the final chapter on Roswell in our source material really touches on this, doesn't it? The weight of carrying that secret.
It does. It talks about how the Roswell story, for the public, might drift into folklore, become just another weird tale. But for those who were there, the witnesses, the families, it remains intensely alive. It's not folklore to them. It's suppressed history.
You see that with Major Marcel's son carrying his father's story for decades. And Mac Brazel living with that wonder and regret.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The decision made in 1947 to prioritize stability over truth had real, lasting consequences for the individuals involved. It created this undercurrent of hidden knowledge, of shared secrets held by ordinary people who saw something extraordinary and were told to pretend they didn't.
And that feeling, that sense of an unresolved mystery, something hidden just beneath the surface, it really comes through in the endings of those 22 global stories too, doesn't it?
Absolutely. They rarely have neat conclusions. The sources often structure these narratives to leave you feeling uneasy. Like the story isn't really over. The phenomenon is still out there, still unexplained, maybe still interacting.
Like the Blue Room story, story 22. That ending is pure creeping dread.
It really is. A tenant moves out of a place in New Mexico, leaves a simple note for the next person. Don't sit in the chair after 3:30 row. Why? Because every morning at 3:33 a.m., this deep, unnatural blue glow fills that corner of the room.
So the phenomenon isn't just a one-off event, it's become localized, attached to a place, a time, and the note passes the curse or the mystery along.
Precisely. It implies persistence. Or take story 10, the passenger in seat 33A.
Right, the man on the plane who sees a figure next to him during some kind of event hears the word observe in his head.
And then the kicker. He checks the flight records later. Seat 33A, the seat he was assigned and sitting in, it doesn't exist on that aircraft's configuration.
So where was he? Was he slightly out of phase with our reality during the encounter?
The implication is something like that. He occupied a space that wasn't technically there, facilitated by the phenomenon. It leaves you questioning the very nature of reality during these events.
And maybe the most extreme example of an unresolved, chilling ending, the empty village, story 19.
That one is pure mystery. A remote Alaskan village, Inuit community, found completely abandoned in 1953. No signs of struggle, food still out, but everyone is gone.
And the strange detail.
All the chairs in the main community building arranged in a perfect, complex spiral. And on the little schoolhouse chalkboard, a drawing. Just circles and dots, but arranged in a pattern that meant nothing to the investigators.
Complete disappearance, no explanation. Just this bizarre, ritualistic-looking arrangement left behind.
Total absence. The ultimate silence. It suggests an event so total, so strange, that it simply erased an entire community from the map, leaving only impossible clues. These endings aren't meant to satisfy, they're meant to linger. To remind you the mystery is ongoing and deeply weird.
So, wrapping this up, for you listening, trying to make sense of this incredibly dense and often contradictory field, what have we learned from this deep dive? We started with Roswell's impossible foil in 1947, and we've journeyed through silent triangles, featureless watchers, and fields that drain batteries across the globe.
I think the consistent thread isn't necessarily definitive proof of extraterrestrial origin, though many reports strongly imply it. The certainty lies in the disruption. These phenomena, whatever they are, cause profound systematic disruption across multiple levels.
Physical disruption to the environment and technology, temporal disruption, stealing time, sensory and neurological disruption in witnesses, and deep, lasting psychological disruption.
Exactly. And the sources show that the human response, particularly from official channels, has consistently been one of containment and silence. Whether it's the self-imposed silence of a terrified witness like Mac Brazel, or the enforced silence of the military cover-up after Roswell.
Which leads to that crucial question the sources raise. What's really more unsettling here? The core mystery, what are these things, where are they from, what do they want? Or the fact that we have evidence suggesting powerful human institutions encountered this reality decades ago and deliberately chose to hide it, to manipulate the narrative, to enforce silence.
It's a powerful question. Is the unknown out there scarier, or the known deception down here? The phenomenon is mysterious, but the cover-up is a documented human action with tangible consequences.
So let's leave you with a final thought, something to really chew on directly from these sources. Go back to that idea of missing time. Think about the hushed farm, those exact 3 minutes where the clock stopped.
If something has the technology, the capability, to selectively pause time for observers, or perhaps to erase the memory of what occurred within that paused interval.
What knowledge could have been imparted or extracted during those moments? What experiences might witnesses have had that were then carefully snipped from their conscious recall?
And if the phenomenon holds that kind of power over time and memory, why would the official explanation revert to something as mundane, as flimsy as a weather balloon? What truth about reality, time, and consciousness was so profound that it needed to be buried under such an obvious, almost contemptuous lie.
That potential gap, the gap between the 3 minutes of stop time and the lifetime of silence that followed, that's something to mull over until our next deep dive.